The clinking of champagne glasses and the murmur of polite conversation faded as I stood, a nervous but excited smile on my face, ready to address the small gathering. This was it. My moment. After years of relentless dedication, late nights fueled by lukewarm coffee, and a burning desire to prove myself, I had finally reached a pinnacle in my career. Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Sterling and Price Capital. The words still felt surreal. I raised my glass, the crystal catching the soft light of the chandelier, ready to thank the people who had supported me on this journey. "Dear family and friends," my mother Susan interjected, her voice amplified just enough to cut through the remaining chatter. She stepped forward, beaming, her arm linked with my brother Ethan's. A woman I didn't recognize clung to his other arm, a sparkling ring prominently displayed on her finger. My blood ran cold. "We have another very special announcement tonight. Ethan and Olivia are engaged." A wave of forced applause rippled through the room. My smile froze, the joy evaporating like morning mist. I stared at my mother, then at Ethan, whose smug expression confirmed my worst fears. This wasn't just a party. It was a carefully orchestrated takeover of the one night I was supposed to be celebrated. "Don't you dare ruin this," my father Mark hissed, his fingers digging into my wrist like a vice as he pulled me slightly aside. His eyes, usually so calculating, were hard with warning. "If you make a scene, Layla, you can forget about any future with this family. Is that clear?" My breath hitched. The familiar sting of being relegated, of being made invisible in my own life, welled up inside me. Years of playing second fiddle, of having my achievements minimized, crashed down on me in that single, suffocating moment. But something shifted within me then. A quiet resolve, a long-dormant defiance, finally awakened. I gently but firmly pulled my arm from his grasp. My gaze swept across the room, landing on the bewildered faces of a few close friends and the knowing, supportive looks of my grandparents. I took a deep breath. No more. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest stories. Your support means the world. If you find this video valuable, please give it a like. I and the other viewers would love to know what city you're from, so please comment your city name down below. Now let's get back to the story. My name is Layla Hayes, and my story began long before that stolen moment, in a quiet, affluent suburb of Sacramento, California. From the outside, our house, with its perfectly manicured lawn and two-car garage, looked like the epitome of upper-middle-class American life. But behind the polished facade, a different reality unfolded, one where I learned early on that some children were simply more valued than others. My parents, Mark and Susan, were firm believers in nurturing potential, or at least, what they perceived as potential. My father, a brilliant but somewhat emotionally detached software engineer, harbored a lifelong dream of raising a child prodigy. My mother, armed with an arsenal of parenting books and an unwavering belief in her methods, was equally determined. Before I was even born, she'd meticulously planned my intellectual and emotional development. The early years were a blur of flashcards, educational toys, and constant assessments. Every milestone was tracked, every perceived delay met with a furrowed brow and hushed discussions between my parents. I remember struggling with basic math concepts at the age of 5, the frustration building in my small chest as my mother sighed, a sound that spoke volumes of her disappointment. "Mark," I recall her saying one evening, her voice laced with concern, "I'm not sure Layla is grasping these concepts as quickly as she should. We might need to consider additional interventions." My father, ever the pragmatist, simply nodded, his gaze lingering on me with a hint of calculation, as if I were a faulty algorithm he couldn't quite debug. Then came Ethan 4 years later. The arrival of my younger brother seemed to flip a switch in our household. Suddenly, the focus intensified, the resources multiplied. Our home transformed into a veritable learning laboratory, overflowing with advanced educational tools, musical instruments sized for tiny hands, and an endless supply of brain-boosting games. Ethan had a private tutor before he even started kindergarten, a privilege that was never even considered for me. The contrast in our upbringings was stark and relentless. While Ethan was enrolled in enrichment programs and lauded for every minor achievement, I was given standard workbooks and gentle, yet persistent reminders to try harder. I remember once, in elementary school, I poured my heart and soul into a science project about the solar system, meticulously crafting each planet and memorizing fascinating facts. I was so proud when I brought it home, eager to share my accomplishment. My mother glanced at it briefly, a polite but distant smile on her face. "That's nice, Layla," she said, before turning her attention to Ethan, who was reciting the alphabet in Spanish, a new skill his tutor had been working on. My father, meanwhile, was busy setting up a sophisticated telescope for Ethan in the backyard. The familiar pang of being overlooked settled in my stomach. One particular incident during my preteen years remains etched in my memory. I had finally managed to secure the lead role in the school play, a small community production of Alice in Wonderland. I was ecstatic, rehearsing my lines tirelessly, my imagination running wild with the whimsical world of the story. The night of the performance, my grandparents, George and Eleanor, were there, their eyes shining with pride. But my parents, they arrived late, just before my first scene, and spent most of the intermission discussing Ethan's recent acceptance into a prestigious math camp. After the play, as my grandparents showered me with praise, my mother simply said, "Ethan will be traveling to a real university campus for his camp." This play was just local. My father didn't even offer a comment. The message was always the same, subtle yet pervasive. Ethan was the one with the real potential, the one deserving of their unwavering attention and resources. I, on the other hand, was simply there, a shadow in my own family's narrative. When I turned 12, that feeling of being an afterthought became undeniably concrete. I had always cherished my bedroom, the one upstairs with the window overlooking the quiet street. It was my sanctuary, the one place where I felt I could truly be myself. One afternoon, I came home from school to find my belongings haphazardly piled in the hallway. My mother stood in the doorway of my room, a satisfied look on her face as Ethan meticulously arranged his new desk and bookshelves. "Ethan needs the bigger room, Layla," she explained, her tone brooking no argument. "He needs more space for his studies. You're older, you'll understand." My protests were met with a dismissive wave of her hand. I was moved to a cramped, windowless room next to the laundry, the constant hum of the machines a permanent soundtrack to my solitude. Standing in that small, airless space, surrounded by boxes filled with the remnants of my childhood, the weight of my parents' blatant favoritism finally crushed me. For the first time, I truly understood my place in their world, and it was a place firmly in Ethan's shadow. The only consistent warmth in the otherwise chilly atmosphere of my adolescence came from my grandparents, George and Eleanor. They lived a few hours away, but their visits were always a bright spot. They asked about my interests, genuinely listened to my stories, and never failed to acknowledge my efforts, no matter how small. I remember once I had spent weeks knitting a scarf for my grandmother. It wasn't perfect. The stitches were uneven in places, and the color was a rather questionable shade of green. My parents barely glanced at it, but Grandma Eleanor wore it every time she visited, her eyes twinkling as she told me how much she loved it. "You have such a thoughtful heart, Layla," she'd said, her words a soothing balm to my often bruised spirit. Grandpa George would always slip me a small amount of money, telling me to buy myself something nice, a gesture that felt like a secret acknowledgement of the emotional neglect I often experienced at home. As high school graduation approached, the pressure to have my future all mapped out intensified, particularly for Ethan, who was being groomed for an Ivy League education. College applications became the central topic of every family dinner. Ethan's achievements were meticulously discussed, his every acceptance letter treated like a national triumph. When I received my acceptance letter from UC Berkeley, a wave of relief and excitement washed over me. I had worked incredibly hard, juggling schoolwork with a part-time job to save up for application fees and hoping for some form of financial aid. During one of our Sunday dinners, while Ethan was regaling everyone with details about his campus visit to Princeton, my grandmother, Eleanor, turned to me with a warm smile. "And what about you, Layla? Have you made your decision yet?" A flicker of hope ignited within me. Finally, a chance to share my own news. "I got accepted to Berkeley," I announced, trying to keep the tremor of excitement out of my voice. "They have a really strong business program, and I even got a small scholarship." The reaction was not what I had hoped for. My mother's fork clattered against her plate, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Berkeley," she said, her eyebrows slightly raised. "Well, that's it practical, I suppose." My father chimed in, his tone matter-of-fact. "We've been discussing finances, Layla, and we've decided to prioritize Ethan's education. His acceptance into the pre-med program at Yale is a truly exceptional opportunity, and it requires a significant financial commitment." My heart sank. "So, the college fund you always said was for both of us?" I began, the words catching in my throat. My mother sighed, as if I were being deliberately obtuse. "Ethan has a real shot at a prestigious career, Layla. You might want to consider starting at a community college and transferring later, or perhaps taking some time to work and figure things out." The casual dismissal stung more than I could articulate. It was as if my dreams and aspirations were simply less valid, less deserving of investment. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken assumptions and ingrained favoritism. Later that evening, as I helped my grandmother clear the dishes, she placed a comforting hand on my arm. "Don't let them dim your light, Layla," she said softly, her eyes filled with a knowing sadness. "Berkeley is an excellent school, and you are a bright, capable young woman." A few weeks later, my grandparents called me. "Layla, dear," my grandmother began, her voice warm and reassuring, "your grandfather and I have been talking. We know how much you want to go to Berkeley, and we want to help you make that happen. We're going to pay for your tuition, all of it. No loans necessary." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Grandma, I don't know what to say. That's so much money." "Nonsense," Grandpa George interjected, his voice firm. "It's an investment in your future, in someone who has always worked hard despite not always getting the recognition she deserves." "You don't need their approval to shine, Layla," Grandma Eleanor added gently. "You've already proven that to us." Their unwavering belief in me was a lifeline, a beacon of hope in a sea of parental indifference. It was their support that allowed me to pack my bags that fall and head to Berkeley, leaving behind the house where I had always felt like an afterthought, and stepping into a future I would build for myself. College was a revelation. For the first time, I wasn't just Ethan's sister, or the one who always needed to try harder. At Berkeley, I was Layla Hayes, a business student with a sharp mind and an insatiable curiosity. Professors praised my analytical skills, and classmates sought my help with assignments. I thrived in the competitive environment, devouring textbooks, participating in case study competitions, and soaking up every bit of knowledge I could. The contrast with Ethan's experience, as recounted in his infrequent and somewhat boastful phone calls home, was stark. While I was navigating the challenges of a rigorous academic program and the responsibilities of managing my own finances, he seemed more focused on the social aspects of his Ivy League experience. His complaints about the demanding workload were often punctuated by tales of exclusive parties and weekend trips. During my sophomore year, I faced a significant setback. Due to an unexpected cut in university funding, the small scholarship I had received was revoked. Panic set in. I was working part-time at a coffee shop, but it wasn't enough to cover the tuition costs. I considered taking out a loan, but the thought of accumulating debt weighed heavily on me. I confided in my grandparents, and without hesitation, they reassured me that they would continue to support my education. Their unwavering generosity allowed me to stay enrolled and focus on my studies. That summer, I secured a coveted internship at a small but reputable investment firm in San Francisco, Sterling and Price Capital. I was eager to gain real-world experience and prove my capabilities. The work was demanding, and the learning curve was steep, but I relished the challenge. One afternoon, while reviewing some client portfolios, I stumbled upon an unusual pattern in the trades of one of the senior partners. The numbers didn't quite add up, and a nagging feeling of unease settled in my stomach. I initially dismissed it as a simple error, but the more I looked, the more suspicious the activity seemed. Torn between my loyalty to the firm and my growing concern, I decided to confide in one of the senior analysts, Mr. Caldwell, a man known for his integrity and sharp intellect. After reviewing the data I had compiled, his expression turned serious. Together, we discreetly investigated further and uncovered a series of unauthorized transactions that suggested a potential case of insider trading. It was a risky situation. Reporting a senior partner could have serious repercussions for my internship and future career prospects. However, my conscience wouldn't allow me to ignore what I had found. With Mr. Caldwell's support, we presented our findings to the firm's managing director. The ensuing investigation confirmed our suspicions, leading to the partner's dismissal and a strengthening of the firm's internal controls. While the situation was stressful, it solidified my reputation as someone with both a keen eye for detail and unwavering ethical principles, qualities that did not go unnoticed by the firm's leadership. My performance during the internship led to a full-time offer at Sterling and Price after graduation. I started as a junior investment analyst, eager to absorb every piece of information and hone my skills. The hours were long, and the pressure was intense, but I thrived in the fast-paced environment. I devoured financial journals, analyzed market trends, and tirelessly worked my way up the ranks. 3 years into my career, I was promoted to lead investment strategist. I had developed a knack for identifying undervalued assets and predicting market shifts, earning the trust and respect of my colleagues and clients. It was during this time, while conducting a routine audit of a high-net-worth portfolio, that I stumbled upon something deeply unsettling. The client was a relatively new one, and as I meticulously reviewed their financial history, I noticed a series of unusual transactions linked to a shared investment account. The account bore my name as a joint holder, a fact that immediately raised red flags. I had never opened such an account. My initial thought was that it was an administrative error, a simple mix-up in paperwork. But as I delved deeper, requesting further documentation and tracing the flow of funds, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The account had been opened several years prior, around the time I started college, and it contained a significant amount of money that I had no knowledge of. Furthermore, I discovered a pattern of withdrawals and deposits that seemed erratic and suspicious. A cold knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was somehow connected to my parents. The timing, the secrecy, the fact that my name was attached to the account without my consent, it all pointed towards something underhanded. I decided to conduct a thorough investigation, meticulously documenting every transaction and cross-referencing the information with publicly available records. What I uncovered sent a shockwave through me. The funds in the account appeared to have originated from various sources, some of which seemed legitimate, while others were far more opaque. There were transfers from shell corporations and even a few transactions that bore the hallmarks of potential money laundering. The implications were staggering. Not only had my parents opened a secret investment account in my name, but they had potentially involved me in illegal financial activities without my knowledge or consent. The betrayal cut deep, reopening old wounds of feeling used and manipulated. I knew I had to confront them, but the potential legal ramifications of what I had discovered terrified me. I decided to seek legal counsel before taking any further action, needing to understand the full scope of the situation and protect myself from any potential fallout. This discovery cast a dark shadow over my professional success, reminding me that even as I climbed higher in my career, the tangled web of my family's secrets continued to lurk beneath the surface. Despite the unsettling discovery of the secret investment account, life at Sterling and Price continued at a demanding pace. My work on the Insight risk scoring system was gaining significant traction. Its ability to accurately predict market fluctuations based on a combination of traditional financial data and unconventional factors like social media sentiment and geopolitical events was proving invaluable to the firm. Upper management was impressed, and discussions about integrating Insight into the core investment strategy were underway. Amidst this professional whirlwind, I received a call from my mother. Her tone was uncharacteristically warm and enthusiastic. "Layla, darling," she began, "I heard about your recent promotion. That's wonderful news." I was immediately suspicious. My parents had rarely shown any genuine interest in my career, their focus always firmly on Ethan. "Thank you, Mother," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Well," she continued a little too brightly, "to celebrate, we'd love to host a small party for you. Just a few close family and friends. We can do it at the house. It would be a lovely way to reconnect." The offer caught me off guard. A celebration hosted by my parents? It felt wrong. My first instinct was to decline, but a small, perhaps foolish, part of me wondered if this could be a genuine attempt to bridge the years of distance. And I admit, there was a strategic element to my hesitation. I needed an opportunity to confront them about the secret account, and having them in a setting where I had some control might be beneficial. "That's thoughtful of you, Mother," I said slowly. "I was actually planning a small gathering myself." "Nonsense, dear," she interjected smoothly. "Let us handle it. You just send us the money for the catering and decorations, and we'll take care of everything else. It will be so much more intimate at home, and it will give the family a chance to celebrate together." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I transferred $3,500 to her account, telling myself that at the very least, my grandparents would be there. Fast forward to the night of the party. As I walked into my childhood home, the lavish decorations were the first sign that something was amiss. White orchids adorned every surface, and a professional caterer bustled in the kitchen. It was far more extravagant than I had envisioned for a small gathering. My grandparents greeted me warmly, their expressions a mixture of happiness for my achievement and a hint of unease. Then came the announcement. My mother's carefully staged interruption, Ethan's smug grin, and my father's heavy-handed warning. As I stood there, microphone in hand, the weight of years of being overlooked fueled my resolve. "Excuse me, everyone," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. "May I have just a moment?" All eyes turned towards me, a hush falling over the room. Olivia, Ethan's fiancée, looked particularly confused. "This gathering tonight," I continued, my gaze sweeping across the faces of my family and a few unfamiliar guests, was intended to celebrate a significant milestone in my life. I was recently appointed Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Sterling and Price Capital. A ripple of murmurs went through the room, a few polite claps breaking the tension. "I'm the one who sent the money for this event," I stated, my eyes locking with my mother's. My mother graciously offered to organize it, and while I appreciate the effort, I was unaware that it would also serve as an engagement party for Ethan. Olivia's eyes widened, and she turned to Ethan, a question in her gaze. "You told me this was just a family dinner to celebrate your sister's promotion," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Ethan could respond, I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I am not against Ethan's engagement, Olivia. What I cannot remain silent about is the fact that my own family has, once again, chosen to erase my moment, just as they have consistently done throughout my life." At that moment, a wave of nausea washed over me. The adrenaline coursing through my veins gave me the courage to broach the other secret, the one that had been gnawing at me for weeks. "Furthermore," I added, my voice dropping slightly but still carrying through the stunned silence, "I recently discovered some concerning financial irregularities involving a shared investment account opened without my knowledge, an account that bears my name and appears to have been used for some highly questionable transactions." My gaze fixed on my parents, their faces paling visibly. The air in the room crackled with unspoken accusations and the weight of long-held secrets finally coming to light. The silence in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Olivia stared at Ethan, her face a mask of disbelief and hurt. Without a word, she slipped the engagement ring off her finger and placed it on the nearest table, the small click echoing in the stillness. She then turned and walked out of the house, her retreating footsteps a stark punctuation mark to the unfolding drama. Ethan, his face a mixture of panic and fury, hurried after her. My father finally found his voice, his face flushed with anger. "You should know your place, Layla. This was not the time or the place." "No, Dad," I retorted, my voice shaking slightly but firm. "This has been the time and place for far too long. This family has always operated on a foundation of favoritism, and I am done being relegated to the shadows." I turned to my grandparents, who stood watching with a mixture of sadness and pride in their eyes. Grandpa George reached out and squeezed my hand. "I don't need the rest of this family to validate who I am anymore," I said, my gaze sweeping across the stunned faces. With my head held high, I walked out the door, the same door I had left countless times feeling insignificant. This time it was different. This time I was leaving on my own terms. The drive back to my grandparents' house was quiet. Grandma Eleanor reached over and gently took my hand. "You did the right thing, Layla," she said softly. "You don't have to carry that burden any longer." A few days later, my grandparents called a family meeting. The atmosphere was tense. My parents were furious, their anger directed squarely at me. But Grandpa George stood firm. "Susan Mark," he said, his voice resonating with an authority I had rarely heard him use, "Eleanor and I have made a decision. We have updated our will. Effective immediately, our entire estate, the house, the savings, the investments will be left to Layla." My mother gasped, her face turning ashen. "What? You can't do that. Ethan is your grandson." "We have seen enough," Grandma Eleanor replied calmly. "Enough to know who truly values hard work, integrity, and kindness. We will not continue to enable favoritism and deceit." Ethan, who had been silent until this point, finally spoke, his voice laced with bitterness. "So you're rewarding her for ruining my engagement?" "You orchestrated a sham engagement at your sister's celebration," Grandpa George countered sternly. "You reaped what you sowed. 3 years have passed since that night. I poured myself into my work, leading Sterling and Price to unprecedented success. When the CEO announced his retirement, I was named his successor. At 30, I became the youngest female CEO in the firm's history. I called my grandparents immediately. I did it," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "You always were worthy, Layla," Grandma Eleanor replied, her words echoing in my heart. Meanwhile, Ethan's life had spiraled. His relationship with Olivia ended, and he struggled to find his footing. He eventually moved back in with my parents. I haven't spoken to them since that night. One spring afternoon, as I was leaving my office, I saw Ethan waiting for me in the lobby. He looked thinner, his eyes hollow. "I'm not here to apologize," he said, his voice flat. I don't understand how you became so successful without any help." I looked at him, not with anger, but with a quiet understanding. "Ethan," I said softly, "I learned to stand on my own when I had nothing. That's something you never had to do." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. My story isn't about revenge. It's about resilience, about choosing yourself, and about finding your own worth, even when those who should have loved you unconditionally failed to see it. I no longer seek validation from my family. I found it within myself, and in the unwavering belief of my grandparents. And that, I realized, is the greatest inheritance of all. Today, my life looks vastly different from the one I once imagined within the confines of my childhood home. As the CEO of Sterling and Price Capital, I navigate the complexities of the financial world with a confidence I never knew I possessed. My days are filled with strategic meetings, market analysis, and leading a team of brilliant individuals. The view from my corner office overlooking the San Francisco skyline is a constant reminder of how far I've come. But amidst the demands of my career, my most cherished moments are still the Sunday dinners I share with my grandparents. Their small, unassuming house remains a sanctuary, filled with the comforting aroma of Grandma Eleanor's cooking and Grandpa George's quiet wisdom. We spend hours reminiscing, flipping through old photo albums that document a life I once felt was defined by being second best. Now, those photos tell a different story, a story of resilience, determination, and the unwavering love of two people who saw my worth even when my own parents didn't. During one of our recent dinners, I asked them if they ever regretted their decision regarding the will. Grandma Eleanor smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "We didn't leave you our assets because of their monetary value, Layla," she said gently. "We left them to you because you understood the value of choice, the importance of integrity, and the strength it takes to stand up for yourself, even when it's difficult." Grandpa George nodded in agreement. "You, my dear, are our true inheritance." Their words resonated deeply within me. It wasn't about the money or the possessions. It was about the faith they had placed in me, the belief they had always held in my potential, even when it was overshadowed by others. That, I realized, was the most valuable inheritance anyone could ever receive. My journey hasn't been easy. There were moments of profound sadness, of feeling utterly alone and insignificant. But through it all, I learned the importance of self-reliance, the power of perseverance, and the unwavering strength that lies within. I stopped seeking validation from those who were incapable of giving it, and instead focused on building my own definition of success. Looking back, the night of my promotion party, the night my own celebration was hijacked, was a pivotal moment. It was the night I finally found my voice, The night I chose myself over the expectations and manipulations of others. It was the night I closed one chapter and began writing a new one, a chapter filled with my own accomplishments, my own choices, and my own hard-earned happiness. And as I continue to navigate the path ahead, I carry with me the unwavering belief that no matter where you start, as long as you don't abandon yourself, the destination will always be worth it.